Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Let me start by introducing our ALP leadership team. In Greenwich, we're fortunate to have a full team to support our advanced students. This chart illustrates the team members and our roles and responsibilities. I'm Bonnie O'Regan, and I've been the ALP facilitator since 2012. Joining us this morning is also Mrs. Tara Fogel from the Science Department. She and I work collaboratively with Dr. Benjamin Marcus from the ELE department and Mr. Mike Reed of the math department. As a leadership team, our primary goal is to deliver concise and transparent information. Please take note, when you communicate with one of us, you are communicating with all of us. During this session, I will be answering the most frequently asked questions I'm asked after parents receive their scores. First of all, what do these scores mean? And how did the committee use these scores to determine placement in the ALP enrichment? Finally, what are the next steps? The overarching goal for this morning is to answer the question all parents ask. How can I work with my child's teacher to help my child grow academically this year? Before we get into the scores and how they're used in the placement process, let's start with what is advanced learning in Greenwich, or ALP. Greenwich Public Schools is committed to developing academic talent in all students and providing the most appropriate academic placement process to ensure success. The ALP program mission is to teach students who give evidence of significantly high performance capability in an accelerated and enriched curriculum in various subjects with their academic peers. That being said, the grade 2 program is an enrichment model in the areas of reading and math. Students who are recommended for ALP enrichment are pulled for 30 minutes of enrichment 4 times a week with the ALP language arts teacher, and or 30 minutes of enrichment 4 times a week with the ALP Greek math teacher. This graphic shows that full placement process, and we talked about this back in November at our first parent meeting. Remember, it's broken down into 3 phases: referral, assessment, and placement. The referral phase is the direct procedure that enters a student into the evaluation phase. It was recently asked whether it mattered whether or not a student came into the referral phase through the body of evidence, teacher referral, or parent referral. Nope, doesn't matter at all. They're all placed. All the students go then into the evaluation phase. In the evaluation phase, we gather information necessary for that placement decision. The assessments students take provide a multitude of information that's not already within that body of evidence gathered. The scores of these assessments are what you just received in the emails. Let's look at what each type of test was and how it's scored. The first type of assessment is an abilities test. The ability test we use is a cognitive abilities test, better known as the COGAT. The COGAT is a test of reasoning skills. It's not like a spelling or math test where if you know the words or facts, you can get 100%. There is no defined curriculum for the COGAT. The COGAT evaluates relationships, systems thinkings, and cognitive ability in 2 symbol systems, words and numbers. Scores are age normed and reported out as standard age scores. Standard age scores are used to show how students taking the COGAT compare in rate and level of cognitive development with other students in the same age group. So the students who are 7 years, 6 months will be compared with other students who are 7 years, 6 months at the time they took the assessment. Nationally, the average standard age score is 100. However, in Greenwich, the average standard age score for the verbal battery is 112 and 119 for the quantitative battery. Students who are recommended for ALP reading enrichment have a verbal battery standard age score of 131. And students recommended for ALP math enrichment had a quantitative standard age score of 137. The second type of assessment is an achievement assessment, which measures what students know and what they're ready to learn next. The NWEA MAP growth assessment is what we use for this purpose. The NWEA is a computer adaptive assessment. This means that if your child answers a question correctly, the next question is more challenging. If they answer If they answer incorrectly, the next one is easier. This type of assessment challenges our top performers without overwhelming students whose skills are below grade level. The NWEA adapts and assesses students' understanding in reading or math concepts and adapts until students are answering questions correctly 50% of the time. When a student completes the assessment, he or she receives a RIT score as a result. RIT is an abbreviation for Roche unit. The difficulty and complexity of each question the students receive is measured using this RIT score. This RIT score indicates the level at which the student is answering the questions, remember, at 50% of the time. Questions with lower RIT scores are answered more frequently. Questions with higher RIT scores are answered correctly less frequently. The more difficult questions will probably require new learning on the part of the student. Note that each subject area has a unique alignment to the RIT scale. So the RIT scores are between subjects are not equivalent. So the RIT score for reading enrichment, the average was at 211. The average math RIT score for the students that were recommended for math enrichment was 206. The last type of assessment we use are the performance assessments. Whereas COGAT answers the question, how well are you reasoning? And MAP answers the question, do you know it? Performance assessments answer the question, how well can you use your reasoning and what you know to generate knowledge? Unlike COGAT and MAP, in which students select one of the responses provided, a performance assessment requires students to perform a task or generate their own responses. In reading, students were asked to read a fable and then asked 4 questions requiring the student to analyze and interpret the fable. In math, students were given a set of 8 questions intended to assess the student's capacity to select and deploy their mathematical knowledge in non-routine contexts. Students' readings responses were scored on a rubric on their demonstrated ability to analyze and interpret the fable. The reading performance task had a maximum of 12 points, and the average reading performance test for students recommended for the ALP enrichment class was 6. In math performance, students' scores are reported out of the number correct out of the 8 questions they were presented with. The average math performance test score for the students placed into ALP is 4. Upon completion of the testing, then we move into the placement phase. Students' tests are further analyzed. A Z-score is calculated for each assessment. What is a Z-score, you ask? A Z-score describes the position of a raw score in terms of its distance from the mean when measured in standard deviation units. If a Z-score is positive, it lies above the mean. If it is negative, it lies below the mean. It is useful to standardize the values of a normal distribution by converting them to Z-scores because they enable us to compare scores. Remember, a student may have a COGAT score of 131, an NWEA RIT score of 206, and a performance test score of 4. We can't compare those until we convert those to Z-scores. As the formula shows, a Z-score is simply the raw score minus the population mean divided by the population standard deviation. The value of the Z-score tells you how many standard deviations you're away from the mean. If a Z-score is at 0, it means it's on the mean. The Z-scores for the cognitive verbal battery, NWEA reading, and literature tests were then averaged. For the Z-scores for the COGAT, quantitative, NWEA math, and problem-solving tasks were then averaged. The averaged Z-scores for reading and math were then ranked, and a score profile is created for identified students. These score reports are reviewed by a group of teachers, administrators, and members of the ALP leadership team at what we call a building advisory committee. The purpose of the building advisory committee meeting is to analyze the full body of evidence and use professional judgment to make placement recommendations for the student. As a team, we're looking for compelling evidence that there is a mismatch between the student's academic needs and instruction. Students are recommended to ALP if their average Z-score places them within the top 10% of district achievement or the top 10% of the building achievement. The average Z-score for the students recommended for ALP reading enrichment was over 1 standard deviation above the mean at 1.1, and the average Z-score of students recommended for ALP math enrichment was also over 1 standard deviation above the district mean of 1.3. That final decision is based on this combination of this objective test performance data and subjective judgment. Subjective data is provided from both parents and teachers. Parents were invited to provide input for the committee to consider. On the form, parents rated the frequency of observations on 5 behavioral characteristics and were asked to provide examples. Teacher observations are also considered in making recommendations. Observations are based on the characteristics and behaviors as defined on the gifted behaviors continuum. Students who have a disability that qualify them for an individualized education plan or an IEP or a 504 plan may be twice exceptional and present the characteristics in a slightly different way. Observations of these behaviors are also considered when making placement recommendations. The team carefully reviewed all the students' individual academic portfolios and made recommendations that reflect their best professional judgment on the best way to meet each child's needs. Teachers routinely instruct, differentiate, provide modifications and extension opportunities for student success for all students within their classroom. Remember, the next evaluation window for additional assessments and potential placement begins in just a few short weeks in March. I'd like to thank you again for your attention this morning and an extended invitation for you to ask questions. Remember, and if you have questions about your individual student, please feel free to email any one of us and we will be able to answer those questions individually. There has been one question that has been posed about looking at the actual test questions. Unfortunately, tests are secure and they may not be viewed except for in 2 instances. First of all, I can't even see the test questions at this point, but I was able to see them as I was administering the assessments. Or when we're looking at analysis reports, we're able to see question types because here's the actual wording from the paperwork that I get from the companies. So any questions that you have, we'll monitor go ahead and type them in. I'm not seeing any questions. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, these materials, Tara, will you please let them know where these things are located on there?
Yes,
on
certainly.
the website, because we already have, we've had some, we have the ones from part of, this is already posted and the video from the evening is already posted.
Yes. So I can navigate or help parents to navigate where these materials are posted online. If you go to the Greenwich Public Schools website.
Why don't I stop share so that you can share?
I'm not.
Or do you want me to, to go for it?
No, we can do that. I can go ahead and share. Let me just see right now. I will go to share. And Bonnie, can you hit me with a thumbs up that you can see my screen? Okay, so I'm in the advanced learning portion of our website right now, which I got to by going under Greenwich Public Schools website. I went to teaching and learning. And then within teaching and learning, I went to the academic content areas. Then advanced learning is the first option there. And this has all of the information about our advanced learning program. Something I would implore all parents to do is to always check out our quarterly newsletter, or All About ALP S'more. But all information found from this session, as well as the session that occurred on Wednesday evening is under informational meetings. This would be under grade 2 referral and placement. So I do have a video from the meeting on Wednesday. And then I also have the actual score report slides that Ms. O'Regan went through. So all of that information is available online.
Thank you. Okay, the scores were not included in your score reports. Would you please email me and I will, I can share those with you. I didn't want to put them out onto the score reports without an explanation of what they were. Supporting your child at home, what you can be doing is interacting with them, asking them questions about what they're learning, and encouraging them to be curious about what they're doing and the world around them. Tara, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that that's the critical point right there, is talking to your students, engaging them in conversation and continuing to ask them why they're thinking what they're thinking, and just getting to know their curiosities.
The process that is in March is exactly the same as the process now. We will be starting with a referral process, where we will be looking at the body of evidence that we've gathered since we've got additional information that we're gathering currently. And then teachers will provide input, parents will be invited to provide input. We will be looking at NWEA again. We'll be doing another performance task and then going through that full placement process again with the building advisory committee meeting. If you feel strongly that your child needs to be challenged further and was not recommended at this time, and you have additional information that we did not have at the time, please feel free to share that with us. Go ahead and email either Advanced Learning or me personally, and we will set up a meeting to talk about those. Any other questions? Are there any other questions? I don't see any more coming in.
Well, on behalf of the rest of the ALP leadership team, thank you, Bonnie, for 2 very informative sessions for our parents. I think that we are good to go. And thank you, Mike, for setting up these meetings on the back end. Excellent. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye.